Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius Podcast. Socius, welcome back to another episode. Today we've got Ali King from Ask Marketing. Welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what you do at Ask Marketing.
Yeah, so we work with typically B2B and service-based businesses to help them to really, be a thought leader. So establish demand and grow their business.
Yeah.
So our business was predominantly a strategy building business until very recently. And then now we also have a managed service arm. So not only can we go in and build a really robust strategy, we can also help them to execute it too.
Nice. So there's so much that I want to talk to you about today in terms of, executing marketing without the strategy, and also, I guess, from an emphasis standpoint, in terms of timing, there's a bunch of noise out there around interest rates and how that's impacting business. And, sometimes you get a lot of business owners demonstrating fear and where to invest their time and money. And, I've seen a few posts recently out on social media about how you can't control the income, which I think is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I think a huge part of that is marketing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to love picking your brains.
Yeah, cool.
You're the topic expert, so I'm looking forward to this. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, the strategy element. Like why create a strategy for marketing?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back a step, I guess I'll paint a little bit of context as to why the business started in that way.
Perfect.
And I guess, so my personal background has always been business and marketing. And the journey was always very much in big business, tech, fashion, sports fashion, etc. And when I left a really big integration that I did from Reebok into Adidas Group, I jumped into a fast growth tech startup in a CMO role. And I guess what that meant was that this particular startup, of course, needed a strategy at this particular point in time, was to launch into Singapore. And it became very evident that the business had invested so much of, and this is very common, so much of their current funding into what was my role, the CMO title, I guess, or head of marketing in many businesses. And what that meant was that I was remunerated, of course, to build a really amazing strategy. But because they had invested so much into my role, that also meant that I was the marketing assistant, the marketing specialist, like running all the ads, doing all the influencer marketing, etc. So jack of all trades, like
wearing all the hats.
Yeah, wearing all the hats, right?
Much
the
like
unicorn.
Every other business owner.
Yeah, the ultimate unicorn, right? In that kind of head of marketing role.
Yeah.
And so I guess that transition is really important to note because it became very evident with a very corporate background of mine moving into a fast growth tech startup that, of course, digital is so diversified now. It's so confusing. It's changing every day, sometimes every hour. And small to medium-sized businesses need and crave that same level of strategic marketing leadership that the corporate counterparts have, yet they don't have the budgets to be able to have all of the roles under that CMO or head of marketing role to actually make that happen. So it became really evident for me, hey, how can we, obviously fast forwarding to now being as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how can we provide that same level of strategic marketing leadership that's required to small to medium-sized startups and scale-ups, but without that insane cost commitment of having to pay for a full-time senior strategic resource. So that's, I guess, some context around why the strategy was always the backbone of our business. It's the one thing that it's really hard to get right.
Yeah, and you really got to make sure you get that strategy right before you go into implementation, right?
Exactly.
And I love what you're saying around, small businesses wanting or needing that strategy. Because, we sort of live a very similar ethos at Confio that, every small business deserves advice.
Yes.
I think every small business deserves strategy.
Yeah.
And requires that strategy before they even try to execute.
Right.
So tell us a little bit, I guess, how things could potentially go wrong if the strategy isn't aligned to the execution.
Well, I guess it kind of comes back to how diversified digital really is. And I mean, I know digital, of course, compared to traditional means of marketing is, of course, a lot more cost effective, but it's also not at the same time. So I guess where I'm coming from is that if you dabble in everything across, if we just talk about like a typical service-based business who is dabbling in perhaps LinkedIn from an organic perspective, LinkedIn from a paid perspective, podcasting from a thought leadership perspective, email marketing from a sales and a marketing perspective, like, hey, you've just got like a few people's roles just, off the top of your tongue there. So you need to, I guess, be really clear on what the key focus is. And I'm not talking about marketing, just being really clear on your commercial business goals for the year and what pillars of a business. So typically we work with service businesses, but so many of our clients now are developing what is a productized side of their business, potentially in the SaaS space. And of course, when you're doing that, you're also diversifying your offering, and therefore your commercial business goals are changing quite often. And so the digital strategy and the marketing strategy off the back of your commercial business strategy is going to be so different depending on what product or service pillar you're focusing on. Which, if we go down a step further, based on who is the person buying that service or that product, what is the value of that product or that service? Is there a flow-on effect from one service into another service, because the marketing and the sales strategies off the back of that are going to be different? So it's pretty easy to get wrong. So it's really important to have a robust, but again, a very agile strategy that can move quickly as the business does, like a lot often are at this current time of the economy as well.
And look, I've seen your service, and this is what I can, definitely talk to in the sense that it's super valuable being clear on what your marketing goals are and making sure that they're aligned to your business goals. A lot of people or businesses out there feel like they don't have time for marketing, or that they dabble in this, they dabble in that, much like you mentioned. What they don't get is marketing is their business. Their business goals are their marketing goals, or they need to be. Hence why the strategy is really valuable.
And it's so funny because I think, especially with the market the way that it is now and everybody feeling quite uncertain about things, it's the businesses that have that really relatable brand that will float to the surface and succeed. And if you don't take the reins and be a thought leader in your industry, you've lost a huge opportunity, but you'll probably sink this year. I think the really amazing brands that take the reins, and
it's what sets you apart, right?
It's what sets you apart. And, people make decisions on emotion and then they rationalize second. So if you can be that relatable, connected person that people can rely upon for advice when things are changing, you're going to be the first person that they think of in your industry when they genuinely need your help. And they will this year.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to be clear on.
So let's unpack thought leadership, because it's a term that's thrown around a lot, but some people don't fully understand it. Like, how would you explain thought leadership to you and your clients?
I would explain thought leadership as, how can you be the number one person that somebody thinks of in your industry? And I think that stems from one thing and one thing only. So it's being clear on what is the conversation that you personally want to own in your industry. What is that? And if you are laser focused on what that is, it can be broad, it can be quite micro, it can be quite macro. But if you're really laser clear on that conversation that you want to own in your industry, then the rest is, of course, just how do you do that, which is, of course, we unpack in our strategies. But if you're clear on that, which is, of course, based on your personal journey, your professional journey, your personal values, and all of the amazing context and experience that kind of, is the tapestry that kind of sews that together, that rich kind of tapestry around your background, which is unique. It's storytelling. If you're clear on that from a personal and a professional perspective, then that's thought leadership. And I think people often think, thought leadership is just professional, but it's really not, because I think people connect to the story as to where you got to where you are. And if you really own that and intertwine that with your professional thought leadership and your professional experience, then that's really serendipitous. Like, it all kind of comes together in this, beautiful storyline.
Absolutely. And at the core of it, what I hear is people will do business with who they enjoy doing business with, or who they can relate to, as you said. So creating a relatable brand it's not just like thought leadership is the term and it's the idea, but it's creating a relatable brand, isn't it?
I know it's so often people say to me, our business is very B2B focused. And so a lot of people, you sit down and have a coffee and they're like, oh, you don't really touch B2C, do you? And it's kind of like, oh, well, that's actually, funnily enough, my background was very consumer. And of course, I don't know if you've really thought much about this, but the B2B sphere or landscape often mimics the B2C, and there's a lot of key learnings that B2B businesses take from B2C, of course, on a smaller scale with potentially less budgets, naturally. But ultimately, B2B and B2C are thrown around all the time, but it's really H to H, like it's human to human. And that's something that I really resonate with, and that's something that we are so proud to always put first in our business, because if you lose those human touch points at every step of the marketing and the sales process, you lose touch.
I love this conversation because it doesn't matter if you're B2B, there's always a human at the end of it, right?
Right.
Like whoever the decision maker is, whether it's the business owner, whether it's the head of buying or head of procurement or the CFO, they're a human.
Right.
And you should just relate your business as B2C or human to human, as you've mentioned, because what you're doing is you're marketing to another human. And being a relatable brand is always going to be beneficial for you to build your business.
100%. And if you continuously, as you would in your normal personal life, going about your day-to-day, always put yourself in the shoes of that person and their needs and how they're feeling and what's important to them, both personally and professionally, then you've kind of got their needs analysis in a professional landscape anyway, and you can kind of, A, how much time they have, B, or how little time they have, I should say, what's important to them and how you can solve their problem. So it's really just, it's so human.
Yeah, perfect. And so talk to us a little bit about, I guess, the implementation aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously I know you're kind of at the forefront of like the marketing tech tools and the things that you're using internally.
Yes.
We've had a lot of people on the show reach out and talk about AI, and people are interested to know as to how that they can improve their business with AI, and I know you've utilized some AI within your business. So I want to hear more about that.
I mean, it's an interesting year, isn't it? I feel if we kind of bring it back to, there's two kind of key things that I'm seeing this year in 2023. And the first one is very AI focused. So everybody's talking about OpenAI, everyone's talking about Chat GPT, and of course Google just launched theirs into beta testing last week. Cool. But I know you guys are using Chat GPT in the Confio business, but I guess from a practical perspective, if we talk about, let's talk about thought leadership and content creation and how all of our clients are trying to create, very much like you guys with this podcast, a content creation machine. And of course that works best when it's done consistently every single month. So how can businesses really use these amazing AI tools to do it better, do it quicker, do it cheaper, etc.? I guess what we have learned off the back of trialing and testing Chat GPT over the last few months is that it certainly can't do it all. It will never replace a human. Now, also for context, we also, even though we're a marketing business, we also invest in copywriting. It's the most important thing in our business to be a thought leader, is that long form written content. And in fact, long form written content fuels our content strategy every month.
And how would you clarify long form? Greater than 500
Blog
words?
length,
or?
600 to 800 words.
Okay.
So if you think, do we want to go really practical? Let's go really practical here. Everyone loves a tip. So at the beginning of every single month, we ideate, myself and my business partner, my sister, the key thought leadership pieces that we want to talk about next month. They could be anything from the very top of the funnel, very education focused. They could be everything. They could be very bottom of funnel focused, like what's a good example? Objection handling in the sales process, or how to intertwine marketing tools into the sales funnel, et cetera, et cetera. So ideating those topics. Then we invest in the writing of those pieces of content. Once we have those long form pieces of content, this is where AI becomes really juicy and helpful. So what we were doing off the back of creating those 2 pieces of long form content is we were personally, our marketing team, Emily, who looks after that side of our business, Weapon, she would then go and take those long form pieces of content and she would dissect them into, 20, 30 different smaller snackable pieces of content that could then be pushed out across our own channels. Now,
Can you trademark that? Snackable pieces of content.
Snackable. It makes sense. It's like relatable, right?
I like
snackable.
that.
It's easy to digest quickly,
good.
like we
like
eat snacks. Who doesn't love snacks?
Yeah.
So where was I up to? So instead of Emily going and dissecting those long form pieces of blog content into these snackable pieces of content, 20 to 30, call it 1 post per day, however you like to think about it, we are feeding Chat GPT our long form pieces of blogs. So instead of saying to Chat GPT, write me a blog about how AI can revolutionize my marketing this year, or whatever you want to talk about, which is going to give you a very generic, very depersonalized, it's going to have the wrong tone of voice. It's going to not know how Ask Marketing speaks. It's not going to have that the leadership that we like to have in our tone of voice, yet that sage type personality, that, very humble, relatable personality. It's not going to have any of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if you reverse your thinking to investing in the thought leadership and the long form content first, feeding that into Chat GPT, they love people like us because we're fueling the algorithm.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's learning from us. And then it spits out the 20 to 30 pieces, so you could, the prompt could be, take this blog and break it up into 20 short form pieces of content that are 1 to 2 sentences long.
Yep.
And it will do that brilliantly. Copy paste blog, extract the pieces out, but still, again, so there's human at the beginning, Chat GPT, AI in the middle, and then it comes back to human number 3. So then those short pieces of snackable content come back to us. They still need human touch.
That's one of the things we've noticed as well. You still need to edit or review because it's a language AI model. Like it's not perfect. And it could be scary as to where these things go, but I completely agree.
Yeah.
Feeding it some really good quality, understanding the tonality, because the system, or should I say AI, doesn't really know.
The robot
doesn't really know what your client wants to hear.
No.
They don't want to hear, they don't know what your brand resonates.
I know.
And so you can't expect it to write in how you would write.
No.
And it would be very disjointed if you suddenly stopped using copywriters and then put out blogs that were just produced from Chat GPT.
Yeah, correct. And it also, the other thing that we've noticed is that it's not, it isn't able to localize what you're saying either. For example, we really put it to the test. Because we use a lot of kind of candid, colloquial, metaphorical language to help people relate to the relationship between sales and marketing. So we kind of started feeding it some prompters as to how we could get to, coming up with some of these metaphorical terms. And, the perfect example is, marketing and sales work together like peanut butter and jelly. Okay, cool. We don't really say that in Australia. I know what it means.
Yeah.
It's definitely not jelly, but it's jam, etc. So it's really not localized. And then the other thing is that it's, as you pointed out, it's not taking on the exact tone of voice that your brand wants to be proud of representing. And I don't know if you've noticed this. You use LinkedIn as much as I do. But people are starting to call out posts that are very clearly written by ChatGPT. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you'll be scrolling through your LinkedIn and like some of the most high engaged posts, people are commenting, love ChatGPT, like great content ChatGPT, and they're calling it out because it's actually separating the people who are really being thought leaders and the people who are just taking the lazy route and are very clearly using it.
It removes the authenticity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which then separates the relatableness, really. And so, for really practical tips, which you've given, what I like is that most business owners, when they start, they're topic experts, right? They might not be great writers, but as long as they can write some good quality piece on what technical element that they're talking to, what product area, what service area, you can easily ask ChatGPT or AI, whatever that tool may be in the future, to split it up, to repurpose it, I think that's a fantastic tip.
Yeah. And to break it down into something smaller. So still invest in the big bit and then know that it can help you to dissect it into smaller bits, which is, for all intensive purposes, a time saver, but it's certainly not a context driver.
And the key warning, right?
Yeah.
Like we've tested this. If you ask it the same question,
Yeah.
it'll produce the same response.
Yeah.
So don't expect your competitor to produce a different response if everyone's using Chat GPT.
Correct.
So you can't rely on it.
Correct.
It's scary what it can do and what's possible. But
and it's so funny, isn't it? Like it's also just really raises the importance. And clients and prospective clients of ours ask us this almost every day, which is, so do I need to do anything every month or do you just do it all for me? And the answer is, of course, you still need to be the thought leader. The term SME is thrown around in terms of subject matter expert. Like you will always be the subject matter expert in your company and your industry and that space. Like a robot can never tell the Will story. And the story is what people connect with.
It's what people buy.
It's what they buy. It's emotion first, rationalize second. They're buying, whether we like it or not. We're in service businesses. Yes, we might have a product offering, but we are delivering it's an emotional connection, and that's what they're connecting to. And so even if you're utilizing tools like this, I think it's really important to remember that you need to humanize. We always use the word, I don't know if this will resonate with your listeners, but the one place that we've got to within our own marketing team for our own business marketing is that Chat GPT will never replace the human, but it also will never what we call nowify it. So you might have noticed that a lot of the content that Chat GPT spits out, it's talking at you, not with you.
Got it.
And I think if you remember that a human needs to nowify that post to be in the now, and by the now I mean like this morning, like contextualize it around what your community would relate with in today, Monday, in February, whatever it is. That's the bit that kind of adds that extra level of connectivity that people are needing and craving.
It all brings it back to being a relatable brand.
Right.
Even the data that it's utilizing, I think it's pre-21, pre-20, something like that. So it's not up to date. It's not relatable, but it's a tool to use.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some other tools that you might think that you can utilize from a marketing perspective? Are there anything else that business owners can utilize to get on top of?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because our business is very service focused, service for us really is defined as any business that has a marketing and a sales team where the transaction happens offline. And what that means, if you go one step further, is the fact that there's a marketing and a sales team that are working together, often they're not, and that marketing and sales are one in the same. Marketing is sales. Marketing is not marketing. Marketing is sales. It needs to be attributed towards sales. And so you can probably gather where I'm going with this is that MarTech tools and, conversations you have had in the past about marketing technology or MarTech as it's referred to, it's a sales enablement piece, right? And so there's some pretty powerful, amazing tools that are out there at the moment. I mean, if I call out a few, one that's really changed our business, I guess I would say is Quilla. Quilla, Qwilr, typical startup, miss out a few letters and you've got it. Probably bad for SEO, but yeah, great company. Quilla are an interactive proposal software tool. They're a SaaS model. They're a subscription model. We pay them every month to use their platform. And it has drastically changed in a positive way our conversion rate from proposal to signed client. It's really in line with our brand too, because it's hyper personalized. It allows for videos in the proposal process. It feels to the user, both on a internet browser and a mobile browser, that we have created them a custom website with a solution that we have customized to their needs. Wow. So if you and I were in a sales meeting right now and I was proposing to you a solution that we had ideated for you, then the proposal that you would be receiving from me, would take minutes and not hours. Unbelievable. It would be hyper personalized with a series of videos that I could quickly use using Loom, another MarTech tool. So it's got a native integration with Loom that it can embed Loom videos in that tool. It also has amazing analytics around what your prospective client is engaging with. And And it also houses the digital contract. So we're no longer having, again, this is why I mentioned the marketing and sales piece, because your marketing team and your sales team are working completely in synergy right now. Like that's a really good example of a marketing tool that enables sales. So yeah, back to what I was saying about the contract, it houses the digital contract as well. Therefore, you don't need to also have, your typical online contract, DocuSign, exactly, or DocHub, or these. I mean, they also have serve another purpose, but it means that your client is getting that, and everything is in that one place. It makes it easy for them. And if you pride yourself on experience like we do, which I know you do as well, it's a beautiful experience for that person.
And I'll come back to, how it relates to how it integrates the CRM tools and the like, because, but before I get onto that, I want to touch on how important it is to understand that sales and marketing are the one unit together.
Right.
Marketing is your business, one unit together. I think that's what works quite well with small businesses in the sense that the topic expert, or as you said, the subject matter expert, is the one also doing the marketing.
Yes.
Now, if they're not great at that skill, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
But if they can balance the two, then it works really well.
Yes.
Because they bring the experience and the authenticity into that sales process and make it really relatable so that their customer makes it much easier for them to buy. Now, I see it often, probably in the larger businesses, as companies start to grow, they tend to separate the marketing arm from the business arm. And it's interesting, within our business, we actually incorporate the two together in the one. Our advisors, or insurance advisors, our marketing team are one in the same.
Yeah.
Everyone brings the same energy and the same level of detail to our customer experience to make that work.
It's so important. It's so funny. Clients often say to us, the first thing that we do when we onboard a client is this workshop, and everyone expects it to be a marketing workshop. We actually don't talk about marketing. No. It's
business goals.
Yeah, it's like the commercial. It's the commercials. Like it's everything, and obviously, like there's a huge qualifiable piece which happens off the back of that, which is like speaking to customers, like interviewing them, like doing an analysis of the market, like looking at what the competitors are doing from a lens of digital and marketing, of course. But marketing really stems from those commercial outcomes. It doesn't kind of sit on the side in the same way that marketing and sales are integrated.
And so then coming back to, I guess, Quilla.
Yes, Quilla. Yeah.
Does that feed into your CRM?
Yes.
What sort of CRM do you use?
Yeah, it does. So it will feed. We actually don't, and the reason that we don't feed it in the way that they have built it out is for a different reason. But it does have a native integration to HubSpot. I believe MailChimp as well. We don't use MailChimp anymore. We use I've lost my ActiveCampaign. We use ActiveCampaign actually at the moment, which it does feed into. It's check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's
and
really
what's
cool.
I know this is sort of like a basic discussion around CRMs and something that's, spoken about quite regularly.
Yes.
But what's your view on the HubSpot, Salesforce discussion? Like, give us the sort of the ins and the outs.
Well, like, just remember, I'm from a very corporate background, so like I'm used to those guys. But it's look, if I'm answering the question from the lens of our typical startup through scale up service client, I would say 50% of them are using HubSpot and 50% are using another tool that's either custom to their industry, which I know in finance, broking, real estate, etc., is quite normal. I don't really have an opinion other than it has to come from a business need perspective. Would I suggest a business jump and translate all of their first-party data onto a HubSpot or a Salesforce if there's not a real business case and they're just doing it from a marketing perspective? The answer would be absolutely not, because there's amazing tools out there, whether it's MailChimp, through ActiveCampaign, through Pipedrive, that are a lot more cost-effective, that offer the same, if not more agile functionality that a startup can understand and get their hands dirty in without necessarily, because obviously the integration cost or the merge cost is a huge factor. Like there's a financial and a time cost there too, right?
Yeah.
So that would probably be my opinion. I'm very agnostic. Like I'm not very for one or against another. Like the reality is like as like senior marketing professionals, like we have to work with all of them.
Definitely.
And it really is about what works for the business and not marketing driving that conversation.
Yeah.
As long as the tool that you're using is able to provide the functionality that you need based on your strategy. So off the back of the development of one of our strategies, if some of the tactics and the channels are including things like, I don't know, it could be anything from LinkedIn outreach to, I don't know, at LinkedIn advertising through to email marketing, of course, sales nurture email marketing. If your current tool can do all of those things and provide the data points and the infrastructure to do that easily, then don't change. If it can't do that, let's look at a solution.
Yeah, and
it's pretty simple, yeah.
And I think naturally too, there's always going to be need for, I guess, segmenting different tasks to different tools.
Yeah.
I often see plenty of clients wanting one tool for everything, which is always a challenge as well, because it's a bit like providing service, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a service provider in, I don't know, the IT space, you're great at IT, but not so great at accounting. Yeah. So you're not going to do IT and accounting.
In the same way that one marketing person can't do everything from ads to PR to SEO to like it's the same thing. Like I think, be clear on, I think my summary would be clear on what you're trying to do and then look at your existing tech stack or your MarTech stack and understanding if that's working for you or not. And if there is a solution that doesn't necessarily mean uprooting all of your CRM data and perhaps plugging that in and just testing and learning. I think like that's the one thing, to just stay agile and testing and learning, because there's always new tools and new subscription models and platforms that are going to help us to do our job better, that don't require that kind of huge investment.
And you touched on sort of like paid ads and the like. Is that something you guys touch on as well?
We actually don't execute advertising.
Okay.
And I'll talk to why. We never wanted to be an agency model. Our business always stemmed from providing that senior strategic marketing leadership to SMEs in the same way that an in-house CMO or head of marketing would. And I guess if we go one step deeper, if you look at all the things we've talked about today, being a thought leader, developing demand, which we should probably talk about instead of lead gen mentality, which is completely different this year, and growing your business. There's three things, I guess, that fundamentally service-based businesses need to be doing that don't require advertising. And by this, I mean, if you do three things this year, just do these three things. 1, develop content, organic content, long form written, short form written, audio, video, etc. content. 2, distribute it on organic social media channels. Personal. Don't use your company LinkedIn page. Use your personal LinkedIn page of the thought leaders within the business. Reshare to the company page. And then the third thing is email marketing. Those three things that I've just mentioned, like investing in thought leadership at a high quality, executing it via organic social media, and email marketing, which includes email marketing and sales, lead nurture, email series. Those three things do not require a spend on advertising. If you're doing those three things well, and obviously that's what we help our clients to do, if at that point, after 3, 6, 9 months, you're doing them well, the results are there, at that point we can layer on things that we might have recommended in your strategy. For example, investing in SEO, maybe layering on paid ads potentially in the LinkedIn space or in the YouTube space, whatever it might be, depending on the business. But we've always been about doing the foundations first and doing them well before you invest in advertising. Something else to note that's really changing this year, not to talk about HubSpot again, when HubSpot became famous, everybody was very willing and open to share their data in exchange for a piece of content. So you jump onto anything, whether it be a gym website, whether it be a askmarketing.com.au website, any website, and they would happily pop in Ali at Ask Marketing in exchange for a downloadable PDF to look at that resource in exchange for information. Yeah. People don't behave like that anymore. They're very, very, very... they're not willing to trust until the last minute. So it's gone from, and this is typical in service businesses in Australia, we've gone from 7 touch points to close a deal to 11.
Interesting.
So if you think about that, 7 touch points with a brand before, so from unawareness about you, unawareness about, they might know you, but they might not know about your company. Unawareness all the way through to being aware, being interested, having a coffee, having another coffee, listening to a podcast, coming to an event, listening to a LinkedIn audio event perhaps, having a sales call, sending a proposal, having another coffee, closing. Is that 11?
Close.
I wasn't counting. Sounds about right. But 11, right? So where I'm going with this is that no longer are people willing to give their information in exchange for something until the very last minute now.
Why do you think that is?
Okay, so many reasons. I think the digital space is flooded. Privacy laws have changed. All of these platforms are really set up to, and again, we're not an agency, so I can't speak too much to this, and an agency owner would be, able to echo this, but all of these platforms have thrown challenges at the way that advertising is run because of the importance of first-party data, owning your databases, the importance of privacy laws and now and respecting that if everyone's sick of accepting cookies on every website they go to, right? So people are less willing to trust because of all of this information and the way that the landscape has changed. Of course, there's economic, impacts. There's the fact that people have just got more information than ever before. People are just wanting a human connection, for goodness sake. So, all of these factors, we could talk about them in a whole separate podcast, but 11 touch points now. So in answer to your question, yes, advertising can and may form a part of the strategies that we deliver for our clients. But because of all of those reasons I just mentioned, I would never recommend a business throw money into advertising and media spend until they're doing the foundations consistently, clearly and concisely every single month using some of those, machine-based tactics that I mentioned before, that process, I should say. And then reassessing, and we can advise on that,
That is the exact reason why strategy is important, right?
Right.
I'm a big believer that there is literally no point throwing money at SEO if you don't have the foundations set. So I love that idea. So effectively, that's what you would call your lead gen strategy. Is that right? Like your 3 elements?
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that, because that's the other thing. A few questions ago, you asked me what are the things that are changing this year. AI is, definitely one. But the entire B2B methodology around generating new business has changed. So lead generation is dead, completely dead. You've probably heard me talk about it on so many other podcasts, but lead generation is dead, and I'll explain why. So lead generation is very reactive. Lead generation relies on demand being there in the first place. So you need to find a Malaysian restaurant for dinner on Saturday night. What do? You type in Malaysian restaurant Bondi into Google search. You are the demand that's already there. So, hey, Malaysian restaurant in Bondi just happens to capture that demand at the point that you're asking for it. You're there, you're ready, you're open to or searching for information. So lead gen is reactive, and it's, the demand that needs to be there. Because of all those things that I mentioned, the economy's changing. Obviously, it takes people longer to trust. People are less receptive to giving you their details. Like, the whole market is shifting. Being a thought leader has never been more important. You need to be the first person someone thinks of when they think of your industry. So the new methodology is around demand generation. So lead gen, big red cross mark through it. Lead gen is dead in the B2B space, and demand gen is what it's all about. And demand generation is proactive as opposed to reactive. It's about owning the space. And again, coming back to the very first thing that we spoke about, at the beginning of this podcast, knowing and owning a conversation in your industry and providing and giving, give. What is it? Give. Our business, we always say this, give, take, right? Just like giving at every single point, just giving so much unbelievable value to generate that demand. Because again, if we, without using the economy as another reason, that is shifting things too, right? So if you're not being a thought leader, being present, owning the conversation in your industry, being that person that people can relate to and think of in your industry that is a breath of fresh air that they can, have as their secret weapon, then A, there's no demand there anyway. B, you're not creating any. So you're just reacting. Like you know what I mean? So if you're not proactively doing these things to generate that demand in the first place through those 3 things I mentioned, the content creation, the distribution on organic social, and the email, and leveraging your database, then businesses that aren't doing that are really going to struggle this year.
And I think having the belief that you can impact demand,
Right.
you know, that you can impact demand generation.
Yeah.
That is what every business owner needs right now.
Right.
I think with so much fear around economic development and the changes that might come through, I think what we need absolutely is to almost highlight you a lot more with your thought leadership around demand generation.
Yeah.
Because we see it all the time with our clients that they're a little bit concerned about what it looks like for the next 12 months.
Yes.
We're really not concerned.
Yeah.
Like, we are so clear that we will continue to provide value and continue to provide a service to clients when they need it.
Yeah.
And we will show why they need it.
100%.
And we can really impact that.
Yeah.
So
you have to own that. I think I think the real leaders will float to the surface of the pool this year, and the rest will not be able to swim. I think it's so important.
Perfect. Ali, it's been an amazing podcast with you. It's been fantastic having you on the show. Naturally, some people may want to reach out, so give us a little plug. Where can they find you? LinkedIn, clearly.
On LinkedIn. I mean, we've talked about LinkedIn all day. On LinkedIn, Alexandra King or Ali King. Our website is askmarketing.com.au.
Perfect. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Will.
And
good way to start the week.
Yes, indeed. Enjoy. We'll have you again soon, no doubt.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.